And I wanted to do a live today talking about what took place in Chicago over the weekend, the Labor Day weekend. And of course, we know that President Donald Trump sent the National Guard to LA dealing with the immigration issues with ICE. And then he sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. To combat crime and immigration. And now the third place he's talking about sending folks is to Chicago. And I wanted to see what were you all's thoughts about him sending the National Guard to Chicago. Chicago has a very profound place in my heart. Most of my family lives in Chicago, South Side and the West Side. And over the Labor Day weekend, I just did a video about it. So normally on my long form videos, I'll read the article or talk about the article, but I'm going to go off the top of my dome today and give you my heartfelt sentiment about how I feel about Chicago and the violence that's taking place. And as you all know, 8 people were killed and at least 50 other people were shot or wounded over the Labor Day weekend. And there's an irony to that, or a dichotomy, or a certain level of hypocrisy. Our national holidays are supposed to be a day of love, interaction with friends, family, and loved ones. But in certain cities, whether you go to a park, a backyard event, or any public place, it is turning into a killing field in Chicago. And I agree with President Donald Trump that they need to send in the National Guard. Chicago is down about 2,500 police officers. They have defunded themselves without Black Lives Matter or any other nonprofit organization talking about defunding the police, which I don't agree with. They're already defunded and undermanned. Chicago needs 2,500 police officers. It is a thankless job. They're underpaid, underappreciated, and underserved. And there is complete chaos in Chicago. Don't ask someone in Logan Square or the northwest suburbs or the south suburbs. Ask people in the city, the south side of Chicago, Inglewood, the west side of Chicago, L-Town or K-Town. Ask those people what it's like to live in Chicago. There's no mantra in Chicago that things can go from 0 to 100 in a second. Chicago is a very dangerous place. It's where black gangs originated. So you have a lot of gang violence. There is definitely a drug epidemic. It is a hub for the drug cartels. You have drug trafficking, human trafficking, tons of violence that is taking place in Chicago. And the mayor, Brandon Johnson, has done a horrific job. I'm in my mid-50s, and I will tell you, Brandon Johnson is the worst mayor I have seen in Chicago ever. This guy was a social studies teacher, never owned a business, not a lawyer, and the people of Chicago decided to vote for this numbskull, Brandon Johnson. And he's way worse than Lori Lightfoot. At least Lori Lightfoot is a lawyer, knows about legislation and the laws, and he has turned out to be worse than Lori Lightfoot, for sure. The city of Chicago is looking at a $1.15 billion deficit. The Chicago school system is at a $700 million deficit. Brandon Johnson keeps asking the federal government to send money. He went on NBC recently, MSNBC, and said that Chicago does not need more police. They need more housing. What kind of nonsensical response is that? He never admitted on the interview on MSNBC that they need more policing. Policing is there as a vestibule for our public safety. And I know they're bad cops, but we do not need to police ourselves. Defunding the police under the Black Lives Matter uh, inertia is not the way to go. And where is Black Lives Matter at today? They absconded over $90 million. They were there for the Mike Brown situation in St. Louis, the George Floyd situation in Minnesota, and you don't hear anything about them. When there's black on black crime, I never saw Black Lives Matter. If Black Lives Matter, they matter whether a white cop kills a black kid or a black kid kills another black kid. If Black Lives Matter, all black lives should matter, and all lives should matter. I never saw Black Lives Matter protest one black on black crime. And here, when you talk about what took place over Labor Day weekend, and I've been doing videos for a couple of years now, every national holiday, whether it is Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, Labor Day in particular, there is a decimation of mankind. There is a high hubris of inhumanity to one another. And it is being bestowed upon people of color, killing each other. You have two scenarios that are in alignment. When it comes to school shootings, you're seeing young white males who are the number one candidate for that sort of decimation. And then the second one you're seeing is young black males who are committing crimes against other black males. The number one cause for death for a 15-year-old to 25-year-old black male is not heart disease, it's not cancer, it's not high blood pressure, it's gun violence. And these non-prevention gun violence programs do not work, whether it's Cure Violence or some of these other non-prevention programs. I'm not in favor of it because if you look at it, if these non-prevention gun violence programs actually did their job, they would work themselves out of a job. They need gun violence. They need this level of violence in order to continue to get federal funding. It's one of the oldest trick bags in the book. Just ask Al Sharpton. Race baiting, race identity, and voting has been played out for so long. And if you talk to black Chicagoans that live in the city, south side or the west side, they want the federal government and Donald Trump to come in, at least to put a cap or to lower the hubris of violence that is taking place in Chicago. And if the numbers are correct, ever since the National Guard has been in Washington, D.C., they say violence has gone down. They have curbed violence, just their presence. The National Guard is not going to be there forever, but this is just common sense. If the Chicago police force is understaffed by 2,500 cops, they need help just in basic manpower. They need help. So if the National Guard could come in and just their presence alone could subdue gun violence, property damage, assaults, carjackings, then what is the problem with their presence? And it's amazing how you don't hear about these non-prevention gun violence programs and community policing in any of your suburban areas. They're not saying that in Barrington, in any of your northwest suburbs, your south suburbs, any of your suburbs in Chicago. Nobody is talking about defunding the police. As a matter of fact, they're advocates for the police. And if you're not doing anything wrong, who cares if there are 5,000 police officers on the street? If you're doing what you're supposed to do, this is not the 1950s and 60s where while driving while black is an issue. I don't believe that. The majority of individuals are decent human beings. They want to go to work as police officers, as firemen, all under the umbrella of public safety. They want to do their job and go home. So we have to figure out how we can make Chicago a safer place. And there are way too many guns on the street. We are number one in the world for the number of guns that are on the street. And we are also the number one country in the world for incarceration. 60% of the homicides in the city of Chicago go unsolved. Is that by design or is that an arbitrary figure? Mayor Brandon Johnson got rid of the shot spotters, that technological advancement that would hear a gunshot sound and then notify the police to come to that area. He doesn't want that. What are we trying to do? Is there a certain scenario going on where there is a design to destroy and kill a whole young generation of people of color? I don't know. And it's Brandon Johnson and Governor Pritzker behind it. We know that Chicago created the Safety Act, which is a liberal law where you can get out under your own recognizance if you commit a minor crime. And how do you define what's major from minor, especially if it happens against you? The looting is out of control. There have been a number recently on the Magnificent Mile, which is one of the fanciest shopping areas in our country, the Magnificent Mile in downtown Chicago. You had a number of young folks that just went into Nordstrom's and a bunch of other places and looted those stores for over $100,000. And those were majority of people of color. We have to look in the mirror. We have lost, there is an absence of manhood in our urban community. Uh, our schools are inept in the inner city. Children are reading at 2 and 3 grade levels behind where they should. There's a lack of love and trust, which those two words are verbs and an action. You have to show it, not just say it, but show it. And you have to develop those skills. And many of our youth today have these undeveloped skills and they're walking around in chaos and disruption. The absence of manhood, not only father, but a father like individual, be it an uncle, older brother, grandfather. Uh, that has been decimated in the black community. And we have to figure out ways to recapitulate and recapture that essence of a true family. And we need to just talk about it and have more videos and more people interacting. Because just because it's happening in Chicago does not mean that it can't go to your city, whether it's St. Louis, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's Los Angeles. The entire state of Los Angeles is being decimated. I think two places that are critically on the brink of unethical, immoral, and inhumane scenarios where undiagnosed mental health is an issue, the opioid crisis, homelessness, gun violence is the state of California under Governor Gavin Newsom, and right behind him is the city of Chicago and Mayor Brandon Johnson. And yes, we are having biblical prophecies that are taking place. We have the children of the corn today. Uh, and President Trump and his adversaries and the government, federal government, needs to come down to Chicago and give some help. As I said, we're talking about 2,500, the need for 2,500 police officers. We're talking about the drug cartels are there. We're talking about a huge opioid crisis, human trafficking, drug trafficking. We're talking about a huge immigration issue. Brandon Johnson spent $400 million on immigration. As I said to you, the Chicago public school system is negative 700 million. And the fiscal year for 2026, they said that Chicago is on the brink of bankruptcy. They're going to have a $1.15 billion deficit. Chicago will be the first major city that will completely go bankrupt. And California will be the first state that will completely go bankrupt. And right behind Chicago, or right neck and neck with Chicago, is New York City under Adams, under Mayor Eric Adams and his administration. So you're seeing all these blue cities and blue states that are having difficulty and are being managed uh, by some of these individuals that are people of color, whether it's a black man or a black woman, and there is a huge debacle that is taking place. And we have to have our voices raised. Chicago is dear to my heart. Brandon Johnson needs to go. Governor Pritzker, who's coming out of Springfield, Illinois, the state capital, how many times has he been to Chicago? All these people that are saying Chicago is fine are not living on the south side or the west side of Chicago. Right now, it's almost 7 p.m. Central Time. None of these folks that are saying Chicago is safe and there's no need for federal help, none of them are living on the south side or west side of Chicago. Those two places are a war zone. Again, gun violence, drug issues, the opioid crisis, drug trafficking, human trafficking. And how in the world, with all the surveillance that we have in 2025, that 60% of the homicides that are committed in the city of Chicago are not being solved? In this scenario where the 8 people were killed and 50 wounded, they did not have one suspect detained or arrested by any of this violence over the Labor Day weekend. Is this by design? Does the governor of Illinois care? Does the mayor, who was a sociology teacher, a social studies teacher, does he care? And the people that are dying every day look just like Brandon Johnson himself, and if he has children, his son or daughter. Do they really care? Governor Pritzker comes from a very rich and wealthy family. He probably has any abstention or towards what's going on. And you hear rumblings throughout many of these urban cities that politicians and people in governmental higher ups are saying, let these people just kill themselves. Let there be a cleansing of society and let them just destroy each other. So if it's not through the prison pipeline, it is going to be through the pipeline of the cemetery. There is no way in Chicago that black people that live in the city that are Democrats and or Republicans, but definitely Democrats, should be yelling at the top of their lungs that they need help. Every national holiday, which is supposed to be a time of celebration, has turned into a killing field in Chicago. And what does that say about tourism, about conventions, national conventions coming to Chicago? Chicago has a 50% commercial real estate vacancy. Businesses are leaving Chicago like they are leaving Oakland, San Francisco, the entire state of California. Many Californians that have been upset about the governmental policies under Gavin Newsom, they've moved to Austin, Texas. People are going to move out of Chicago. There's stories about millionaires and billionaires in New York City that are leaving hand over fist. The taxation for personal property has gone up under Brandon Johnson. He does not want the National Guard there because that is going to interrupt his federal funding. Brandon Johnson wants to continue to beg the federal government. That's why he made it a sanctuary city, so he could get the money. This is all about money, and it's not about people, places, and things. Please open your eyes and don't have a shudder over what's really going on with your local politics and your national politics. You need to make sure that your mayor and your governor of your state is held more accountable than what's going on in Washington, D.C. So I just wanted to do a live and give you my personal view on how I feel about it. I love Chicago dearly. I go back there all the time. And there is a lot of placating going on with the politics in Chicago. Brandon Johnson is the worst mayor in Chicago I have ever seen. He needs to go. Um, and Governor Pritzker is right there as one of the worst governors. Both of them are terrible individuals. So, should the National Guard go to Chicago for a 30-day or 60-day stay? For sure. Does Chicago CPD, Chicago Police Department, need to figure out some kind of hiring or increase in pay to garner those 2,500 vacant seats in the police force that they need? They're understaffed. We do not need to defund the police. And what are we going to do? We're going to take this back to cowboys and Indians in the old days. Nobody talks about community policing except black urban cities. It is ridiculous. No other race of folks are talking about we should police ourselves. That would be the worst thing in the world and would be a misnomer. There is a decimation and denigration and destruction that is taking place in our black community, in our school, in our homes, our fatherless homes, our inner city schools. The test scores that these kids are presenting, nobody wants to go to college, nobody wants to get an education. The music is demonic and overly sexualized. There's programming going on and propaganda. Nobody wants to learn a trade. Everybody wants to be an entertainer or an athlete. And we are going to miss the entire boat as a black race. This generation behind me and us is going to be lost in the sauce with artificial intelligence, technology moving at the pace it is moving at. Uh, Things are going to change in manufacturing and distribution with humanoid robotics, even in your fast food uh, areas. What are this whole influx of individuals in their late teens and early 20s? What are they going to do? The drill music is demonic. All of this is by design. And to have a politician such as Brandon Johnson, who comes out of education, he should know the statistics on what is going on with the young black youth in the city of Chicago and their test scores and their behavior and the dynamics that are playing out in the black family. If anybody should know, he should know. You're talking about the biggest hypocrite and whatever his ultimate design, but he does not want the National Guard there because it would interrupt the federal funding that they would get or they have been getting in the city of Chicago. And Chicago in fiscal year 2026 is going to have a $1.15 billion deficit. Chicago City, the third largest city in America, is on the brink of bankruptcy, morally, ethically, and financially. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth.